Well, I am here to welcome our wonderful guest, Natasha Sharma, here today. Natasha Sharma was born and brought up in the UK. She spent considerable time in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and now lives in Mumbai, India, with her husband, Rrajeev Sharma, and their two feline fur babies, Freyja and Isaac. I hope I'm saying Freyja right.
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Okay. She's a bonus mother to the beautiful Rewa Khare Sharma. I love that. Her passion is money and manifestation, and her mission in life is to have conversations about death and use that inevitably to free people to enjoy their lives now. She believes that death needs to be an easy day-to-day dinner table conversation. In that pursuit, she is starting the conversation in the upcoming collaborative book project, Wealth Codes, Sacred Strategies for Abundance, launching soon in August. And she'll continue to write and speak openly and extensively about death until her mission is accomplished. You can always reach out to her as well to invite her to speak to you, your family, your employees, and anyone you feel will benefit from the reprioritization of their work and their lives. So welcome so much, Natasha. I'm so glad you're here with us today. And
Thanks, Beth.
I just find so Natasha and I are part of this book project together, and I just find it so fascinating and so curious that in a book on wealth codes that your topic is death. And I just want to mention I work with a retreat, and I was just this morning. I'm telling you, I don't normally have conversations like this with people, but one of the women on the retreat had apparently she had been in a terrible accident, and long story short, she now works with um, sort of healthcare, like sort of in-home healthcare in a variety of ways. And we were literally having a conversation where she was talking about helping people really come to terms with their inevitable or approaching death. And I just find it so fascinating that I literally just had that conversation with her like half an hour ago. And here we are. So I'm curious, about your experience. Like, what brought you to have this passion for this topic?
Okay, so death death has been in my life from a very, very young age. I lost my mother when I was very young, and through my life, I have lost people from to all sorts of death, disease, suicide, murder, terrorism, the whole gamut. I don't know how I've been so blessed, but I have. And
Mhm.
what actually, I've walked toe to toe with the whole grief and grieving process my whole life. And
Mhm.
then, so I'm not saying that it was that I knew it from the beginning. I'm not saying that it was easy, but there's been a whole lot of experience and a whole lot of learning. It took me 30 years to get over my mother's death, and then after that, the people who I've lost, and after I sort of, I guess, mastered that part of it, I'm able to now cycle through grief or huge change, which is also a sort of a grief.
Mhm.
I'm able to cycle through that pretty fast because I've sort of taken the grieving process as a tool,
Mhm.
um, which I talk about in my chapter as well.
Mhm.
And During the pandemic, what basically happened is that I had to come face to face with my own mortality. So there's two parts to my conversations about death. One is when we look at our loved ones, our parents. As we grow older, our parents are growing older, and then there's the whole, you know, um, responsibility of care. Are we the caregivers, or are they alone, or that whole thing, and they're aging, and we know they're going to die, or do we know they were going to die? Do we acknowledge that they're going to die? Are there
Mhm.
wills in place? So through the pandemic, I've just seen so many people, intelligent, successful, rich businessmen, who've just left things and gone.
Mhm.
And then you have the families who are supposed to be grieving, who instead are working through this mess and family politics and fights and courts, and it's
Right.
just so unnecessary, because
Mhm.
it is a fact that we're all going to die. But it
Exactly.
seems that the
Yeah.
pursuit of humanity is to search for this immortality, build the
Right.
buildings and make the statues and the lineage and children, and I don't know, we just do everything to escape the actual fact, which is that we are going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have found out from my own experience about when I faced my own mortality in the mirror, and I'm like, okay, my life is here for this, blink of an eye as far as the universe is concerned, right? We're here today,
Yes.
we're gone tomorrow. So we're
Yeah.
here for a ride, we're here to have fun, and we should leave responsibly. We should
Mm-hmm.
also help our loved ones to leave responsibly. And I found in my personal experience, if I launch a conversation about death, then it's rejected. People
Mm.
just say, oh, don't, it's bad luck, or, oh, you're being morbid, or I don't want to think about my death and my will. And I'm like, why? Like, what, and it's not just my older relatives, it's me as well. And I tell them that, tomorrow the plane could crash, the bus could, I mean, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah,
Sarah, right? So,
exactly.
and we say this stuff, we say this whole thing of, you know, uh, live for the moment and all of that stuff, but I don't think most people don't actually embody it, they don't imbibe it, and they
Mm-hmm.
definitely don't live like that. And what I found for me personally is when I've actually embodied that truth and I've managed to get over the fear of death, the fear of the unknown, and accept it, um there I found abundance, because now I'm free to live my life
Mm-hmm.
without the pursuit of things. All I have to pursue is my happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And things are great. Things are fantastic. Things are
Right.
lovely.
Right. Yeah, no, it's so interesting. Yeah, so I was kind of going to ask you, like, how has, if we start with, because there's kind of two parts to this. One is sort of, navigating what it means to lose like, your own mother at a young age, much less these other loved ones that you mentioned. And so the first part is sort of like, for those who are sort of working through grief, I think for some people they feel that the anniversary of a loved one's passing will come around and that can revisit. What is sort of, you mentioned you're at a different place with grief now than you ever used to be. What do you feel has kind of helped you to get into a space of, I'm not even sure what the right word would be, if it's acceptance or surrender or just flow with it? When someone has lost a loved one, what would you kind of say to them? What has helped you to get to that place?
So you bring up the death anniversary. The first thing that was different for me was the fact that I would miss my mother way more on her birthday and on my birthday than I did on her death anniversary.
Hmm.
To be very honest, the death anniversary is full of like, ritual, and you have to do it. And there's a whole lot of gray. But on my birthday, which is the day of joy, then the fact that she's not calling to wish me a happy birthday becomes a void.
Yeah.
And similarly on her birthday. So birthdays for me typically have been more difficult than the death anniversary, for sure. That's
Hmm.
point number one. And point number two, what I would say to anybody who has lost a loved one is the fact that um to let them go, because Steph, I know you know this, right? But the soul goes on, the story goes on, and we don't know what's going to happen. But
Hmm.
to wish them well, that they've gone beyond this world. Now,
Hmm.
maybe it's a good after thing, maybe it's a bad after. We know, none of us know.
Hmm.
But the point is that they have moved on. Point is that
Right.
they're on the next stage of their journey, whatever that may be. So just wish them well. Um, Send them a whole lot of love,
Hmm.
and just remember the memories. And I know this sounds trite, but really to focus on the fact that, okay, when you lose a loved one, the person you're crying for is yourself.
It's,
The loss
yes,
that
it's
you're
totally
feeling
true.
is you. It's
It's your
all
void.
selfish. It's
Hmm.
all about, what am I going to do? How's
Right.
my life going to be without this person?
Hmm.
So at that point, to give yourself a little perspective and sort of shift the kaleidoscope, if you will,
Right.
and realize that what you're grieving is what you're going to miss.
Yes.
And as far as that person is concerned, you have so many memories.
Right.
And if you didn't have those memories, then you wouldn't be missing the person. So
Exactly.
then stay
Hmm.
with those memories, stay with the love, and just wish them well. And
Hmm.
then, go through the grief process, be
Hmm.
cognizant of that. It's there to help. And we all cycle through the stages of grief,
Hmm.
up and down, back and forth, for
Right.
days, months, years, weeks. That depends on each person.
Hmm.
But to be aware of what you're going through. And awareness is choice. The minute that you have awareness, then you have a choice to choose how to behave and how
That
to
is
be.
really true. It's really empowering, and I think, to your point, when those trigger moments come up, like the birthday, because that is when the void occurs, is to sort of allow that to be filled. I sort of see it like filling with the memories. So it's not like you said, like, well, what don't I have today? It's what did I have? How can I embrace that? And what's interesting is, as an intuitive and as someone who connects with past loved ones, I get both. I get that we know that they are there for us. They are in the spirit world. Their energy always exists. It's like we can know that conceptually, and we can still miss that person. Like it can be both. So just because we
Absolutely.
kind of can rationally know that they're there, or even see them or feel them, there's still, that sense of how wonderful and beautiful that we got to have them tangibly. Like how amazing we got to have them tangibly in our own lives. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
100%.
And then the other side of this is when it comes to us personally, and I agree with you that, I feel like in general, the conversation around death is either non-existent, or it's uncomfortable, or to your point, it can get really messy when it involves stuff and money and family, and it can cause strife. There's so many pieces of it that just seem kind of messed up. So,
Hmm.
if I'm sitting here and I'm generally not thinking about my own mortality, fortunately, it's not something that's constantly on my mind. Like, how would I begin to, like, what questions would I ask myself to begin to live my life differently through the lens of, like, I accept that I'm going to die and it could be tomorrow. Like, what question would I ask myself, or kind of what would you say to sort of, what would you shift, right? Like, how would that kaleidoscope sort of shift?
So it really depends on the individual and what level to which they have explored their self-awareness, right? So, if you were to ask me, as you did, what would I do? I would actually say very little, because you are so um, deep into your self-awareness and self-discovery journey, going towards self-actualization, that for you, I don't think what I would say to someone who's not on the self-awareness journey would be the same.
I hear
So,
you. Yeah.
what I would say to not you, but to anyone else
It's okay.
listening,
You can say it to me too. I'm open.
first you look in the mirror and you really ask yourself about death. That I am in the mirror, and tomorrow I'm not here, and how do I feel?
Hmm.
And then you scan your body and you really look into your own eyes. And then inevitably, if there's any fear or anything, you will start crying. You will start crying because you're having a dialogue with yourself.
Hmm.
And then if there is a fear around the death, if there is, denial or anger, or generally it's fear. And that fear is not particularly, I don't think, of death, but through the media, we're constantly exposed to how violent it's going to be, and how no one shows death as a peaceful passing. Very rarely, in very few films and
True. Yeah.
television series and stuff, right? So
It'd be,
we have
yeah,
a
it wouldn't
fear,
be so interesting. Right.
there's flashing blue lights and the paddles and the this and the life support and and DNR, and so
Hmm.
it's all over dramatized, right? Whereas death is a very natural process, and that's not shown to us. So I think there's a lot of for a lot of people, the fear comes from that the time of death, or the type of death. That's the
Hmm.
first fear. Then there's the fear of the unknown, that we don't know what's going to happen.
Yep.
And if people are religious, then depending on their religious beliefs, is it heaven or hell, are they sinners or saints, that whole
Yeah.
bit comes up. So
The
it's
unknown.
it it's up to each person to do this dialogue, and to actually then start facing the fear. And as you
Mhm.
know, there are all these different tools out there to help everyone cope with fear in their own ways. But
Right.
ultimately, I think the message that I would like to leave as my legacy is the fact that we are born and we will die, and that's a fact. And we celebrate birthdays, and we should celebrate our upcoming death as well. And I'm not
Hmm.
the only one talking about this. There's a thing called death doulas now. There's
Yes.
a lot of stuff about compassionate end of life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bits and pieces happening around
Right.
there. I'm just lending my voice to the same conversation,
Yeah.
wherein I would like someone to sit and say, oh, when I die, do this, or when I die, this would be fun, so that
Yeah.
so that when they do pass on, that we can have a celebration for their lives
Yeah.
instead of just this,
Yeah.
gaping void and
Yeah.
crippling sort of sadness.
I feel like that too. I mean, I think I look at, times that I've gone to, and it's just sort of cultural, like a wake or a funeral, and people are grieving. So it tends to be, a more somber event. But if I were to, which I really haven't, but I've thought about it, but if I were to plan, I would prefer it to be like I mean, I like to live my life as a celebration. I like to wake up and feel the gratitude and feel the joy. And so how would I not also desire that at my end of this life, like my completion of this phase, so to speak. So,
Absolutely. So
yeah.
there's just one thing I would like to add on to that, that yes, a lot of the rituals around death are needed for the closure.
Hmm.
So to have the funeral, to have the somber moment, to view the body, if the situation permits, all of those bits are important for
Hmm.
closure.
Hmm.
But after that, the way they would in the olden days when they would have a wake, which was basically dancing a jig and raising a glass and, just having a party, that is how I would like to go. And that's
Right.
what I would want people to do after I'm gone.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So when, we're talking about this book, this is your chapter as part of this book called Wealth Codes. So that kind of brings us into this space of like, how does, if I think about my own mortality, and at the same time, I am currently living and I am desiring, wealth in a variety of areas of my life, including, for me also that the feeling of freedom is wealth, like that ability to feel that freedom, and whether that comes through, having a certain amount of money to do the things that feel free, or to not feel the stress, or to feel that the wealth of family and friendships around me. Like, how does the conversation around death sort of help us to create that sense of wealth for ourselves? Like, what to you is that relationship between death and abundance?
So I'll give you my own example so that I'm not preaching.
Yeah.
What I felt what I experienced rather, when I looked in the mirror and I had the conversation and I overcame the fear and I did the
Hmm.
whole acceptance piece, was that when I then looked at my life, and I'm talking about the things that I was manifesting, and the house, the car, the holiday home, the next thing, um, and when I actually really considered my death, right, and I considered, okay, this is my property, this is my jewelry, this I want to leave to this person, this I want to leave to this person, and that's when I realized very, very clearly that everything's going to be left behind.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
now when I'm manifesting, or when I'm choosing the next material thing, then the values behind that have changed. So it's,
Hmm.
so earlier it would be a full accumulation, whether it's the savings, whether it's, for the rainy day, or, the next designer bag, or, the next home, and, et cetera, et cetera. I found the need for that lessening. And
Hmm.
as the need for that has lessened, my wealth has increased, because I'm in the present moment, completely expanded. I'm happy here right now. Now,
Hmm.
do I really want to collect another 10 diamond rings? I only have 10 fingers. And then I have to then decide who to leave them for. And it's just, I've reprioritized my definition of wealth.
Hmm.
Um, as you know, and as you've written in your chapter as well, right? Wealth is not about the dollars and cents necessarily. Of course, it's
Right.
an important part. Like I said,
Hmm.
we need the money, or the things we're manifesting, we have to buy them, right? So,
Right.
um, so I'm not denying that part at all. But what I'm saying is the importance of it has lessened, and my today and my this moment has become a lot more valuable.
Right. Yes. The feeling of living in
So
the moment. Yeah. No.
exactly.
Yeah. I
So
appreciate
that's
that.
how the death and abundance is tied in together for me.
Right.
And I'm under the freedom category. So all three things
Yes.
tie up together.
It is freedom. Yeah. Because we're sort of, freeing ourselves. And I mean, what comes to mind for me is also just again, we talk about culture and society, and so much of what can feel like a priority. To me, it's also looking at, well, is this my priority, or do I just believe this is a priority because it's what I'm seeing around me? And what do I have to sacrifice to get that thing when if, if things were to end tomorrow and I would prefer to be spending my time, like my wealth is my time with my family. My wealth is just that gentle moment of watching the sunset with my friends, then that extra diamond ring may not be as
Absolutely.
important. It's like if
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting to think of it that way. And that's literally this morning having this conversation with this client. She was talking about a woman who this woman close to death, and this client was helping this woman. She had like these beautiful hand beaded dresses from these big designers, and she was
Oh,
spending a lot
wow.
of time looking to who to give them to after her passing. And this client was helping her prioritize where do you want to spend your time on deepening this relationship that you feel has kind of gone astray with a loved one? Or do you want to spend a lot of your time on, holding on to these dresses or passing them along? It's like, again, they talk about priorities. I think it really helps us to find the priorities that are ours, that are very unique to us, and perhaps letting go of some of the societal priorities or keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak, or what we think wealth is supposed to look like.
I was just gonna say, you took the words out of my mouth. This is our world, right? I mean, you spoke
Yeah,
to this lady half an hour ago, and now we're taking words out of each other's mouths. I love this. Um,
synchronicities.
absolutely. So basically, I was gonna say this, but do you realize if you stop to think about it, and if you just take a step back and you look at the history of modern civilization, right? The keeping up with the Joneses only came about in the 1920s and the 1930s once television was invented and once advertising started. It's
Hmm.
actually when aspirational selling and marketing started that we started this whole keeping up with the Joneses, when they first launched televisions and refrigerators and hoovers, right? What didn't exist before that. And
Hmm.
definitely in tribal cultures, when everyone's okay in the little mud hut, because also back then there was a hierarchy to society. There was a king and the ministers, and then
Right.
whatever, the villagers and whatever. But by and large today, it's not just a societal thing. It's a very, very cleverly thought out economic and political thing. It's
Yes.
got very little to
Oh
do
yeah.
with you and I, because the
Yeah.
minute that we stop watching the ads,
Hmm.
then we no longer desire them. That's what's really interesting.
Exactly. And it's interesting because you talk about being aspirational. And if I look back at like the 1600s, for instance, perhaps I would be at a certain level. Let's say I were a farmer. I'm not going to become a king. It's just not going to happen. Like my life is going to be
Right.
farmer. So I
Right.
cannot be aspirational, which is sort of freeing in a sense, but also not. So what's so interesting is, now with industrialization and like you said, marketing and things, so we have the ability to be aspirational. We have the ability to be kind of almost, in a sense, anything you desire, right? Like in a
Still
sense.
can't be king.
Well, we still can be king. We still can be king. I may not go to the moon, but maybe I could go to the moon
Oh, you
with
could definitely go to the moon,
Elon
but
Musk.
what's her name? What only Meghan Markle can make it to the Buckingham Palace, not all of
Right.
us,
Right,
because the country
exactly.
doesn't exist anymore. There are only a handful of kings and queens and princesses, and everything said and done, there is a glass ceiling.
Yeah.
Even today, the
Mhm.
whole even though it might seem that the hierarchy is a lot more lessened, it's still there. There is a glass ceiling beyond the uber rich still exists. There
There
is a
is.
world out there that's not easily accessible. However, you're absolutely right. If that's what you really desire, sure, of course you can get there,
And
right? But
yeah, you could grow up in, we see stories all the time. You could grow up in, tenements and you can make your way wealth wise. You can make your way up. You can climb the corporate ladder. As an entrepreneur, you can be 20 years old and make millions of dollars on a YouTube channel. So it's sort of broken the structure in that way. But I think my point though is aspirationally, I think what we're looking at is still even now that we can be aspirational, it's being mindfully aspirational. It's being mindful
Yes.
of, is this actually something that I want? And it can be hard to differentiate sometimes because we're so enculturated to desire certain things that everyone's talking about and everyone has, and that's the next car and that's the next thing, and it means something. And yet,
Mm-hmm.
when we take the meaning away from some of those things, well, what do I want to just be sailing on a boat around the world? Like, do I want to? Do
Oh,
I
well, if that's what you really want to do, then yeah, sure, go for it, right? It's like
exactly?
if the next designer bag truly gives you happiness, then fine. So what you're saying is about defining the feeling, right? So once you achieve that, so I
Mhm.
guess what the problem is when we put our happiness at that future time. That when
Yes.
I buy the boat, then I'll be happy.
Hmm.
Now, if you're running away from your own happiness, then that buying the boat's not going to give you that, right? You and I both know that very clearly, right? So
Yes.
it's a question of, but let's say somebody is fulfilled and wants the boat and manifests the boat and then is happy on the boat, then yay, go for
Totally.
it. Because
Right.
we're here on earth to have fun. We're here on
Hmm.
earth to enjoy the human existence. And
Hmm.
that involves the five senses. The touching nice things, feeling pleasure, feeling pain, having good
Hmm.
food, good wine.
Hmm.
It's all part of the human experience. In the soul form, we can't enjoy those things, right?
Right.
So we're here to enjoy those things without any judgment, is what I feel.
Right.
And I think really accepting the fact that there is a checkout, and yes, we don't know when, but
Right.
it is definitely there. So
Right.
enjoy what you have while you have it.
Hmm.
And like you said, if everyone could actually do what you do, which is be in a state of gratitude and expansion,
Hmm.
then the whole of life is wonderful, with
Right.
the things, without the things, with the next best thing or whatever, right? So that comes from actually embracing and accepting death. That's according to
Right.
my experience. And that I would like to keep on talking about this to encourage each and every one to come to this point, for their own selves and for their loved ones. It
Yeah.
is truly liberating.
Yeah, well, let me ask you then, because I think sometimes we talk about like the end of life, and we talk about like what's your bucket list, right? But the
Mhm.
bucket list is still aspirational. It's still looking towards what you are going to do. So, like, what kind of recommendations do you have for someone to really just like be if someone comes to you and they are kind of unhappy, like to find that even in the things that are not perfect in their lives, to kind of find that happiness, to find that sense of contentment in the moment.
um so I personally don't do the bucket list thing. I know what it is, and I know how it's added a lot of value to everyone's life, but to me that's like, um that's a lot of energy. So I
It is.
preserve my energy instead. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, yes, perhaps I wouldn't say it's on my bucket list, but I really, really would like to see the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
um so I guess experiences like that, and
Mhm.
if they happen, great. If not, it's fine. I really, really want to truly sit and be still and enjoy being human,
Yeah.
and
I think for you,
that's
it's really just like in the moment. It's not about the bucket list. It's like in this moment, can I
Mhm,
enjoy? I mean, this is actually a really soft sweater someone gave me. Can I just enjoy the softness of this sweater? Like it's so
mhm,
soft. How amazing is that in this moment? Can I just
mhm.
enjoy, the connection in this moment of us having this conversation? Can I enjoy this, the sense of this coffee that I'm sipping? Like it really brings it down to like it might feel complicated to some people, but like the simple things, it really does kind of bring it to the simplicity of the day. Like the fact I get to wake up today and breathe in this gorgeous air. I get to see the sunset if I desire.
Mhm.
I can choose to do these things today for just the feeling of just I don't know what the right word is, like just feeling fulfilled in this moment, just in my life in this moment, in these beautiful,
Just being
precious
alive.
moments. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, if you were to kind of like leave us with sort of one piece of wisdom in navigating this human world in this lifetime, like what is something that you would sort of want to really express to people?
Mm. It's really interesting. Normally, the stuff that I have to say at the end just gets all saved up, but the nuggets have been dropped throughout this conversation.
I'm so
So to be
glad.
fair,
That's
so I think the last thing we were talking about is what I would have said. I would have basically said, or I will say that it sounds very simple, but it's not. The reason that it's not is because we have been conditioned otherwise by society, by the education system. We've been trained to be workers, to go to 9 to 5, to become the, the next thing, and all of those bits. And it's all very run, 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 rush, rush, rush. And it becomes difficult to pause and to savor these moments. But what I would like to say that is in the middle of traffic with the honking noises around you, with a million people, let's say you're in Times Square in New York, and you can still stop and pause, and you can find that gap in the noise. You can find that gap in the moment. You can find the gap between the words the other person is saying, and you can slow time down. And if you, so for me, meditation doesn't mean sitting under a banyan tree in the Himalayas. For me, meditation means finding those moments in the middle of modern life, and to actually appreciate that. And the gateway to abundance is gratitude. And when you are living in gratitude, then you will automatically be able to be mindful in the present moment. That's what I found. And it's not super complicated. It doesn't need a practice. It doesn't need a degree. You don't need a guru. You can just do this yourself.
Right. I love that. It's so beautiful. Thank you. It's like such beautiful wisdom. I love that so much, especially about we don't have to go somewhere else. We can just find it in that beautiful moment, just in the gap. I love that. That's beautiful. Maybe that'll be the title for your next book.
It's really funny. The last time I went to England, which was pre-pandemic, I haven't been able to go back home since the pandemic, but I actually sat on the tube. I mean, do you know the underground system in
Yes,
London? And
yes,
the famous saying is "mind the gap."
yes.
So I actually had my phone trying to record the overhead announcer saying "mind the gap, mind the gap." I couldn't I couldn't capture it. I always just missed it. But yeah, I've been thinking about the gap for a while.
That's perfect. Oh my gosh, the way you said it was just exquisite. So, thank you so much for being here with me. And if someone were to find you, what's the best way to kind of locate you online?
So honestly, an Instagram DM is probably the fastest and the best way to reach
Mhm.
me. With full disclosure, I'm not very active on Instagram in terms of posting, but
Right.
I'm definitely there every day, multiple times. And I have posted in the past, and then I obviously will be now around the book and stuff. But I'm just trying to decide what kind of content I want to put out there, but I'm present and I do check it. I also have a Facebook group page, which I've also which will be there in the show notes.
Right.
And
Yes.
but if you want to hear me speak, I'm on Clubhouse. I
Oh,
have dedicated rooms on Mondays through Thursdays, but we are looking at starting a couple of other rooms. We generally, so my passion in life is, and my expertise is money and manifestation. That's what I
mhm,
work with my
mhm.
clients.
Right.
And my mission in life is to talk about death. So it's two different things. So on Clubhouse, you'll find me talking about money and manifestation. And if I do get interest after the book, I don't mind holding rooms on death either, but
Right.
as and when. So Clubhouse is a good place. If people are there, they can just follow me and then, put the bell next to my name. So when I am talking in a room, they'll get a notification
Fantastic. I love it.
because that's
Beautiful.
interactive. So you can actually talk to me then.
Wonderful. Yeah, and it sounds like you have a gift for our listeners. So, and that will be in the show notes, a link for that. So, what is that gift?
So basically, my husband and I have a music label called Global Village Records. And when he heard that was coming on the show, he said that, oh, why don't we give a gift to your listeners? And it's 20 tracks on Spotify. So it's you just have to click the link and then, save it to your favorites. And it's a healing and meditation
Mhm,
playlist recorded at 432 hertz, which
mhm,
is basically the frequency of the heart chakra and
mhm,
the frequency at which the core of the earth resonates,
mhm.
and not what normal music is programmed at, which is 440, very disruptive, chaotic sort of energy. So this is set at the heart center music. So sorry, frequency. So please
Mhm.
enjoy.
Oh, I can't wait to listen to it. Thank you so much for being here with us. I just really appreciate you and your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie. I had a great time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Wonderful.
you too.
Bye bye.
Bye.